perhaps famously, Steve had a bit of a temper.
Sure.
Steve Jobs. Would you say his particular personality in this aspect was constructive or destructive in the process of shaping these opinion-based ideas?
So in Build, I write a chapter called Assholes.
Yes, and you lay out beautifully the types of assholes, and maybe you could speak to the constructive and the destructive types of assholes.
Okay. So there's really two delineations that I've found of, real fundamental ones. And that is, again, the why. Why do I feel this person is an asshole?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They might not be. I feel this is a person who's an asshole. Are they motivated by their ego? Or are they motivated by their mission? Something they're trying to do and doing in service of something else, right? Sometimes those lines can be blurry, but it's usually pretty clear. When it's ego motivated, it's clear they're just trying to get up in the ranks, push people down, shove people aside. I think we saw a president do that on a stage once. I'm me, and I'm the guy, right? And I'm going to prove it by pushing everyone away and being nefarious or what have you, either passively aggressive or aggressively aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing about themselves. There's another one, which is someone who's so attentive to detail and unrelenting that they're trying to get the right things for the customer or in service of their mission. And they want to make sure we fulfill those things, right? And they really care. They don't micromanage all the details, but they micromanage the details where it touches the customer in some way.
Mm-hmm.
People who work with those types of people who are unrelenting and push you and might make you upset, a lot of times it's a knee-jerk reaction to go, they are an asshole. Get off my back. You're an ass. Blah, 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 blah. Right? And you're protecting your ego. Because what's happening is that person is usually pushing you beyond your boundaries. They see something that we can do or you can do that you're just either not wanting to do for whatever reason. You're not confident in that. You're like, I don't want to take the extra time, and saying, no, we need to get that done, and pushing you. Okay. And so when we came to those areas, it wasn't just a one-on-one, but could be Steve against the team going, we need glass instead of plastic on the front face of the iPhone. And we're going to do this. And we're like, God, and so we did it. And he pushed us because he didn't know all the details, but he could see in our minds that we're like, we could probably, but man, it's really putting us in risk. And we laid out the risks for him. And he's like, I'm willing to take those risks. We'll do that. We're like, we might be 3 months late. He's like, this is so important. We need to stay on time. But it would be all the time, push, push, push. It reminds me of like kids growing up, and me as growing up, when your parents push you to make you grow beyond your boundaries, your personal boundaries. And you're like, God damn it, I'm sorry. But they do it for the right reasons. Now, let's see. It's not bullying. It's not about bullying. It's not about demeaning. It's about either pushing you to another part of the mission that needs to get done, or it's about critiquing your work, but not judging you.
Yes. Well,
right?
There's a lot to say there. So one, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And you laid out a very nice picture, but it does feel like there's sometimes gray areas,
yes,
which is why it makes all of this very complicated. So one question I have for you in terms of glass on the iPhone, how important is it that, like Steve in that case, is right? Because I could argue each side. It seems like, in one sense, just having a strong vision and opinion is already going to make everybody grow, even if it turns out to be the wrong. As long as you are sort of standing your ground, Napoleon invading Russia or something in the winter. Like, it's just not going to be a
He's
good
not that
idea.
good, right?
It's not a good idea, but I'm going to hold to that. And then once you decide, you go all in. And then from that, even if the whole team knows it's the wrong decision, just sticking by it, powering through, you will learn through the pain of it. Like, everybody will learn. So that's one side. The other is maybe the asshole, the vision-driven asshole, gets to be more and more of an asshole if they have a track record of, through that process, having built people up, having made the correct decisions. They're not allowed to be an asshole.
They're in rare air and no one can challenge them.
Right.
Right. Steve was never that. That's the great thing. He was never unchallengeable. You could challenge him. Now the plastic to glass story is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the project, well before we were going, we had always had these things about, plastic front iPods, these kinds of things, scratches and all that other stuff. So we said, are we going to have a glass or a plastic display, a cover for the display? Because the display was glass underneath it. We argued back and forth about glass versus plastic. And then we all landed together on plastic. Okay? The original decision was plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons were, okay, we don't want to make a mistake. Glass can break. People drop them all the time. So we don't want to have a fragile device because you're going to be using even more than a music player, right? And you're going to be holding your head and putting it in your pocket and misses and all that stuff. So we went down the road with plastic. When the product was shown at Mac World in 2007, the first time, that was plastic. We had just enough of them in the field at the time. We started seeing light scratches on the plastic. Reviewers who didn't have the device yet, because it was behind glass. If you remember 2007, the Jesus phone comes up and no one could even touch them. You could just look at it in this beautiful museum quality box, like it came from the future or whatever, the past. And it was like, oh, and you just looked and that was all you got. But then people said, well, what covers on that? Reviewers who knew better, and they're like, it's plastic. And they were like, really? And so there was enough of a doubt there. And then when we started to do it, and then Steve changed the frame of reference of the question or of the result of what the customer would think. And he was like, if we designed it with plastic and it's in their pocket all the time and it gets scratched by coins, lightly scratched, or by keys or something like that, that is a design problem. We need to fix that was our bad. If they go off and drop it, or even slightly drop it, and it cracks, it's the customer's fault. And they have less likelihood to complain. Yes, they'll complain, but they're part of that failure.
Yes. Oh, right? That's fascinating.
And then
there's truth to that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then they were part of why it failed. Whereas the design, they didn't do anything wrong. It was just sitting in their pocket and it's scratching. Yeah. That's normal use. Yeah. Abnormal use has been dropped. And we're like, oh, now we get it. And so we all moved to that mindset when you framed the problem and the solution in that way versus the original framing where we all landed on plastic. So, and then he was unrelenting on that, but we all had moved. And we had moved mindset and we understood the why and we marshaled together. And then by the end of June, and it was crazy, the mechanical product design teams, sourcing, all of us, the partner, Corning, pulled together to make that happen because it was the right reason, right? So this, you look at these stories and you hear just the top line rumors of the takeaways, but that's not usually how it all happened of like one leader was, that's not how Steve was. Now I've seen leaders who are just pounding, and just had no real empathy for the team and understanding the why. And it is the way I want it, right? I am the supreme leader. That wasn't like that when
He just had a very strong
A
opinion,
very strong opinion.
but it was challengeable.
It was challengeable, and if you came with the right thing, it was you could modulate that, but you had to come with a team. It couldn't just be you. It had to come a team and data and to overcome, because it was a very strong opinion.
And there's personal quirks of character, like you said.
Bad days and good days.
Bad days and good days. So there's also the three options you said. You notice that the third option is always going to be the one that's picked.
Right, sure.
Those kinds of
idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies. And that brings up another thing.
Okay.
You said challenge the idea, not the person. I'm somebody who has I have a temper. I use colorful language and so on. When on teams I work, in my private life, I'm much calmer and so on. But when I get really passionate with engineering teams,
sure.
And
I've been called an asshole.
And I am distinctly aware that you cross lines often. There's like levels, right?
Sure.
You could. It has to do with language and how language is heard. So, for example, you could say a lot of stuff to me. You could swear. You could say stuff that sounds like I don't know, Lex. Sometimes I think you're the dumbest human on the face of the earth, or something. I don't know.
Sure.
This sounds very personal, right? But I'm not going to take that personally. I understand what's being said, and then I'm also noticed that there's other people that take stuff more personally. This has to do with teams and figuring out like, okay, who's going to take certain words personally and not, and you have to know. That's what makes a great coach, a great leader, a mentor. You have to like factor all that in. But there's something about just being an asshole and being passionate and really driven that sometimes you do cross lines. And I don't know what to do with that, because it feels like it comes with the territory. Like it seems like you can't just have a perfectly optimized.
No, absolutely not. We're humans.
Yeah.
We're humans. We don't have a program. Everyone's programmed the same way to react the same way to given stimulus, right?
Yeah.
So, you said, I don't know if this was a real example, but you said, oh, you're the dumbest human on earth or whatever. I would never say that. Absolutely never. And if someone said that to me, or I saw someone else say that to another person on the team, absolutely not. That is not allowed, because that's judging someone. You may be heated, and you can get heated and you can say it in your intonation, but to then try to put a label on it and put a label on a person, that is not allowed. So if you let that kind of culture happen and it becomes somewhat, sometimes it's in jest, it has to be very much in jest, and those two people have to have a really good working relationship. But other than that, I'm sorry, it's going to be a lot more, you could say, aseptic in that way, that you're not going to add that stuff in, but you can do it with all other types of ways without saying that, because then people who do react to that kind of language and don't have those shields, because they might not have that same confidence level that you do, and you can just brush it off. That can be very cancerous in a team, because people then meme that, and then they see, oh, that's the right way to be. You got to snuff that out, and you got to be that. You got to be that change or that model that you want to show the team.
Yes, it's true. Even if it doesn't affect me, it's going to affect a significant enough fraction of brilliant people where that shouldn't be part of the culture.
Exactly. And other people see that happen, and then, oh, I guess that's acceptable, right? Just like politics in the workplace, is that acceptable or not? I call it out exactly when I see it in front of everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's just another ego-driven thing. You have to set the tone as a leader for what you want your organization to be and how it gets reflected in the world. And you have to uphold that. And you can have an excursion outside of that, but you have to go back and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to go and apologize, heal, and say, I was not the person I wanted to be that day. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
And even in front of the team. And have that humility and say, we're all human here. And just because I'm the leader doesn't mean I don't make mistakes.
So have the self-awareness, apologize.
Exactly.
And that's also part of the culture.
Oh, yeah.
How are you different from Steve as a leader and designer? So you've spoken about sort of what made you stronger, which is he was able to challenge, he was able to push you to bring out the best.
Well, I come from the technical angle, right? Deep technology, software, hardware, systems thinking, implementation, all that stuff. So I have a different bent. He wanted to be an engineer, started, but really he was much better at all the other things, the storytelling, the interfacing, and being the voice of the customer and being that product marketer in a way, right? That we talked about. I grew into being the product marketing, then marketing. He came really out the other way, right? And never got really deep technically. So that's two different mindsets. One's not better or worse. It's just that's how it is. And it takes all kinds and all kinds can do great designs.
Did it manifest itself differently? Just the fact that you came from those different places.
Absolutely.
Like what? So like the discussion about glass on the iPhone was probably had a different flavor to it.
Sure. When you started getting into the technical details, enough so you're getting into the third order technical details, and he can't argue with that anymore. Then with someone like, he's like, okay, at some point he's like, I can't win this war. Like, and he learned that very early on because he didn't like the way the look of the Macintosh board, the PCB, was laid out. He wanted to be beautiful on the outside and on the inside. Yeah. He's like, why are all these wires running this way? Why doesn't it have all this symmetry? And we have to make it beautiful on the inside. And even the traces on the boards have to look a certain way. Yep. So the teams made the board they knew that would work. And then they made the board that the way Steve wanted it. And that didn't work. And then Steve instantly figured out, like, at some point, don't micromanage every single detail. There's some things he doesn't know enough about, and so he would get out of that. But that was one of those instances where he pushed really hard, and that's his opinion. So they said, okay, we're going to make it a data-driven decision, and we're going to make both, and we're going to show you the results, right? And then from there, he didn't get into those details. So from that, you could have a great challenge, right? Because then you could get those data and say, we can't do that. And let me show you why. Or we can do that. And then Steve would go, you can't do that. And you're like, oh, we can do that. Let me show you. Right. So there's certain times when you were like bringing something to reality that he didn't think could exist. Right. So it was always that creative tension, that interaction that was so successful. Right. I think, but there was one other fundamental thing that was different, and that it graded on the team. And that I made sure, and I learned from, to not do, and I maybe overdo now in the opposite direction, which is when there's a great idea that comes from the team, acknowledge that person and go, that is a great idea. As the leader, the opinion driven, that's a great idea. Let's build on that. Let's see if that can do that. Or it's a great idea, but not for now. Put it aside. But call out when people have great ideas because it's infectious. And that means maybe not ideas that bubble up to the customer level, but inside the organization. People they get rewarded for their ideas and say, that's a great one. Steve was always like, you give an idea and he would go, okay. I don't know. The next day, 24 hours later, it would come back with slight modifications. I've had this genius idea, right? And sooner or later, we'd look around the table and we'd roll our eyes and go, here we go again.
So it demotivates you from generating ideas a little bit.
Yeah, well, we got used to it. But, later on in the team, it was just not, it doesn't want to bring the best, right? Because if you're always like, the reaction is never, that's a genius idea. Mm-hmm. It was always it was either negative or neutral. Right? Yeah. Then it doesn't have that same emotional effect that you want you to bring your best.
Yeah. Sometimes it's fun when people get excited about it. Just yeah. You kind of build on top. Excitement it could be, but coupled with sort of harshness when the idea is bad, and you call out the bad ideas too. So it's the good and the bad.
Oh, you could say you don't have to say bad idea. You say maybe not now. Let's table that for later. Let's discuss it, or say. That's a decent idea, but did you think about that idea this way? Not just no or yes, but let's talk about why that might not be applicable in this case so that they can learn. So the next time they bring the next idea, they can modulate and understand to start seeing through the opinion-based decision makers or the database decision and bring better formatted arguments or ideas so that you have better chance of success the next time.
Yeah.
Right? You got to train through those moments. You got to teach. Those are teaching moments.
Yeah, teachable moments. I aspire to be that kind of person. I'll usually just say that idea is shit. That is and then that I remember that this brilliant person just gave that really shitty idea. So I remember to make sure the next time they give a good idea, I really compliment that good idea.
Exactly.
But I personally, I mean, it's emotion, but I call out the really shitty ideas.
But you should call it the really great ones.
Yeah.
If you let the pendulum swing both ways, then everybody goes, he's balanced.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's always one way,
That's right.
why bring any idea?
I'm all about the pendulum.
Right?
So-
You got to have both. The joy and the pain. Don't just give me pain all the
yin
time.
and the yang.